Thank you, Carmen. Things are growing here in this church community, and while we can't be together in person, know that you're held in this virtual space by all the hearts and good souls that make this community whole. And to support that work of this community in its ministries and its good works here in our church, around our city, and stretching across the globe, we ask you now for the morning offering. You can find the link to the donate button on the live stream or on our website. We appreciate your generous support this morning. The reading this morning is from the book Breathing Room by the poet Peter Davison. And from the foreword, the breath is the most intimate aspect of our existence. It connects us to the biosphere. Breath makes our voice operate. It enables oxygen to penetrate our bodies. Breath lends us rhyme and meter, the means by which poetry came into existence. The connection of words to breath, to sense to mind, to memory to rhythm, to emotion to memory. And from the poem Opening Up. Stop, watch the maples bending in the wind, tossing their boughs in summer agitation. Quick before sunset, swim the salt creek that creeps up from the coast a mile away, to hiss beneath the bridges, trickle through the swaying stalks of marsh grass, burdened with more nourishment than 20 tons of humus. Here one is the happiest when not too clean. Come on, walk barefoot over new-cut stalks of green lawn grass, pausing to wipe off the sticky blades that squeeze between your toes. Along the granite of the garden wall, 100 varied blossoms flash their hues of gold and scarlet, peach and ivory. One skyscraper stands up among the lilies, brandishing blossoms like archangels' trumpets, all while the thirsty grasses dream the day.
Bend toward them. I can hear the tide of green engorge and stiffen, music in the blood, lifting sensation past the reach of time, mingling with the future. Come, let's turn. Let's walk indoors and open up the house.
Last week, our choir actually did sing for the service, virtually for the Offertory, if you remember, if you were here. It was our first virtual choral project, and we hope to start a second one today, preparations for the second one today. The anthem we're about to sing, our quartet here this morning, is inspired by a composer, a high school choir teacher in Portland, Oregon, Christopher Rust, who was seeking an opportunity for his high school students to sing virtually, and this piece was composed a couple of months ago for his students, and we're happy to sing it today. It's a piece that answers the question, why do we sing?
I sing because I breathe. I sing because I see. I sing because I know the oceans will continue to roll. I sing because I feel. I sing because I hear. I sing because I know the forest will continue to grow. I hear the sounds that the world wants to see. I hear the music and I add my own voice. I sing because I breathe. I sing because I see. I sing because I know that someone hears my voice. And the joy, and the joy, and the joy, and the joy.
I want to thank Carmen for bringing Kay into the space again this morning. It's lovely to feel her presence among us and around us. Kay had an approach to sermon writing that I loved. She would approach sermons as writing letters, and often she would address the salutation to a church member or the congregation. And so this Sunday I want to honor Kay's writing approach, but I will leave the salutation in. Dear life, I hope this letter finds you well. It's been a while since I've written, but times being what they are, I needed to take some space, clear my head, and collect my thoughts. I recently read about a magical golden mailbox in Santa Rosa created by the folks from the U.S. Postal Service who want to hear about how we're coping, whether reflecting on the past or imagining the future. Yes, you heard that right. The U.S. Postal Service, which is making space for our thoughts and feelings to travel beyond the standard delivery services. And given the pressures the postal workers are under right now, I did not want to tax them. If you've been keeping up on the headlines, you know we've been through some tough months. Well, okay, yes, the last 4 years have been challenging. Why, just yesterday we marked 7 months since the city went into lockdown due to COVID. And no doubt you've seen the pictures of the fires, the devastation. Maybe you've smelled the smoke. The fires that have burned millions of acres, wiping out forests and wildlife, human life, entire communities. Our skies have gone black, and ash falls like rain. And in the midst of the upcoming elections and now a Supreme Court nomination, our political system feels like a firestorm. Under the bent knee of white supremacy, come pleas to be heard. In the streets, voices rise above tear gas that burns and chokes. At our borders, refugees and asylum seekers are cooped up in cages, silenced behind the walls of hatred and fear. And across the planet, fires burn, storms rage. In our need and greed, we extract and deplete. Under the weight of it all, we can barely catch our breath. I know. It's like Carmen says, life gets congested. Remember, sit yourself down, give yourself some room. Breathe, little pork chop, breathe. Did you read the story by Annie Galliano? Her husband, Mike, is a firefighter, and together they created a class for firefighters and their families. Hers is called Breathing Room. Annie writes, "The purpose of my class was to give fighter families tips on how to keep from living too close to the edge with the ever-present danger of going over. To go over is to face collapse, breakdown, or complete utter implosion of your marriage and your family. The goal is to back away from the edge, to give you and your family some breathing room. Like an overstuffed closet that can hold one more item, we must clean out the closet, make some space, or else it will come crashing down on our heads someday and leave us as life keeps heaping more and more upon us. Firefighting is not a desk job. When the human body is faced with danger, it undergoes immediate, dramatic physical changes for the purposes of survival. It is exhilarating. It gives you superhuman strength. But the more your body has to fight to survive, the harder it is to work to recover when it's all over. Annie has tips. Don't overcommit. Know your limits. Give yourself some space. Get some exercise and get some rest. What's good for the firefighters and their families sounds like that's good advice for all of us, don't you think? Because let's face it, these last 7 months, right, these last 4 years have been draining, even despairing. The threats before us, be it forest fires or fascism, push us close to the edge. And in our efforts to turn things back, how do we stand the line without going over? Annie says, recognize your limits. Make space. Rest up. And then regroup. I heed Annie's advice, but I also turn to the artists looking for answers too. I've been thinking about the Oakland-based artist Woody Diothello's show, Breathing Room. Diothello was born in Miami, his family of Haitian descent. The ceramic sculptures are based on what Diothello describes as a contemporary Nasiki, a type of Central African object or container inhabited by a spirit. While there is joy in his work, he recalls the stories and the histories of the African diaspora, recognizing that some stories are tragic, unjust, and heart-wrenching. Holding all that hurt and pain, Diothello finds a way to bring the pieces to life. Looking at Diothello's vessels capable of holding and releasing, something in me opens up, or maybe something breaks open, and I remember that we are carriers of a spirit, our breath lifting and falling as we make our way. But as Diothello makes clear, there are too many beautiful black and brown vessels filled with life and spirit, and that in the hands of colonialist power have been broken, burned, and often left to die. Whole communities over generations denied breathing room. But something is breaking open. We see it in the streets, in the signs, in the songs, in the long and winding lines waiting to cast their votes. Voices demanding to be heard. To hold the line on hatred and beat back the bigotry, to beat back the flames of bigotry, we need to keep up the pressure. To be part of the big love brigade requires collective efforts. We need to work together, assess our strength, recognize our limits, and forge partnerships that will help us to stay strong for the battles ahead. We need to go the distance, but not go over the edge. Each of us in the big love brigade needs some time to take a breather, set down the armor, and put the tools aside. We are learning to be nimble and pivot to meet the heavy demands of the time, but there also needs to be a pause to lighten our load and give ourselves a rest. A battlefield tent might come to mind, but I prefer the image of the sukkah, a temporary dwelling described in the Jewish Bible, where it's written the ancient Israelites built open shelters out of palm fronds during the 40 years in the desert, and where the farmers gather at the end of the harvest. In the fall, Jews celebrate Sukkot, the Feast of the Tabernacle, also known as the Festival of Shelters. Inside the sukkah, you come to find respite, to rest, have breathing room. Tradition says that you keep 4 important symbols inside the sukkah. Together, they represent the blessings of nature: the closed frond of a date palm, myrtle bough and willow branch, and fruit from the citron tree. Symbols, I'd like to think that remind us that we are dependent on Earth's bounty and a part of it too. In the sukkah, we come seeking balance, ease, and gratitude for life's blessings. Now, not everyone has access to palm fronds, branches of willow and myrtle, and fruits from the citron tree, but we all need access to places and spaces that help us connect to the sources that restore our souls. Across religious traditions and cultures are practices that teach us to find balance, to be still, to breathe into the steady ebb and flow that's essential to all creation. That is how the Big Love Brigade will go the distance without going over. We are each filled with a spaciousness and spirit, and we're each our own sukkah, a movable tabernacle, a mutable shelter. We are co-creators, taking cues from the natural world that surrounds us. We drift into cloud-filled sky and get lost in the stars. We float in the waters, stand tall and centered like the mountains or the majestic redwood trees. We become aware of our bodies, our breath, our entire being. And in just being, we find ourselves resting in the beautiful story of creation. Our beautiful blue-green planet suffers. The signs are everywhere. Fires and floods, glaciers retreating, waters warming and rising, heat, scorched earth, parched land. We have stepped beyond the bounds and things are out of balance. Earth cries out for breathing room. And we, in the Big Love Brigade, must stop and listen. We must follow the cues and the clues to find our balance and bring ourselves back and our beloved planet back from going over the edge. When I feel myself nearing the brink, I pull out a particular memory to bring me back from going over. I was 17. With 2 friends, we rode our bikes from Yarmouth to Cundy's Harbor, all of 40 miles, following the coastal route along the Atlantic seaboard in Maine. It took us 2 days each way. Like I said, these were the early days of my long-distance cycling adventures. On our second night, we camped along a beach on the Winnegans Bay. The night was clear. It was late summer, the sky a rich royal blue, and a new moon rising. Stars slowly formed before our eyes. The slow exhale of an incoming tide came to rest upon the shore. And outside our small tent, we built a campfire, watching the embers glow and the sparks take flight. I had recently finished reading Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, a lyrical and quiet story about struggle and spiritual awakening. And looking up into the star-filled sky, feeling the heat and the fire, hearing the waves fall and rise, I felt what Siddhartha felt, a coming home to myself and a part of the great cycle of life. My breath, lifting and falling like the tide. My body resting in the sand. The fire crackling, sparks rising to the stars. The soft sound of voices like a song. I was inside the breathing room, and with each inhale of breath, felt myself part of it. Dear life, I imagine the folks at the U.S. Portal Service have many letters to deliver, and I want this one to make its way to you. But before I go, I have one last story. While thinking about Cundy's Harbor, I was reminded of a letter that Hess wrote. This now 100-year-old letter is about the power of trees and how we can take refuge in them. Hess writes, "For me, trees have always been the most penetrating preachers. I revere them when they live in tribes and families, in forests and groves. Trees are sanctuaries. Whoever knows how to speak to them, whomever knows how to listen to them, can learn the truth. They do not preach learning and precepts. They preach, undeterred by particulars, the ancient laws of life. A tree says, a kernel is hidden in me, a spark, a thought. I am life from eternal life. The attempt and the risk that the Eternal Mother took with me is unique. Unique the form of veins of my skin, unique the smallest play of leaves in my branches, and the smallest scar on my bark. I was made to form and reveal the eternal in my smallest special detail. When we are stricken and cannot bear our lives any longer, then a tree has something to say to us. Be still. Be still. Life. If you happen to run into any of the folks from the Big Love Brigade, tell them I'm thinking of them. Tell them, beloveds, may you find stillness and strength, a place to rest and find rejuvenation, be it at the border of the woods, at the break of an ocean wave, the banks of a river, the soft edges of fresh-cut grass, or deep inside the lyric of a song. Give yourself some room and relish what it means to be alive, and then breathe. Reiko told me, I believe, that that's the first time we've sung that hymn at church. Am I right? Not often we've sung this song, that hymn. So thank you for joining in, and I hope the choir was of help as you made your way. Dear friends, in this leaving, let us hold on to this: the enduring of love, the persisting of hope, the remembering of joy, the offering of gratitude, the receiving of grace, and the blessings of peace. Go in peace.